This tutorial is going to take you through making your own dance music composition on Garageband. We're going to start by making some drums, but we're not going to click on drummer, which does it all automatically. We're going to make our own drum loop so we can customize it a bit. So we're going to click on the one on the left hand side when you make a new Garageband project, software instrument. That's the one we're going to choose for all of our tracks in this project. So when we've got software instrument, we start off by default with this one here, the classic electric piano, but we want to choose a drum kit. And in dance music, we want to use an electronic drum kit to get a really kind of electronic dancey sound. So I'm going to click on that. You can see loads of stuff here. Choose one that's got an exciting name. I'm going to go with After Party. There we go. Now, when you've chosen one, you're then going to create a new loop here. And you can do that either by right-clicking and pressing Create MIDI Region, or you can hold the Command key on your keyboard. That's labeled CMD with a little symbol next to it. Or if you're using a PC keyboard, it's the little picture of the Windows logo, the 4 squares. And if you watch my mouse, what happens when I hold that is it turns into a pencil. We're going to be doing that quite a lot in this composition to be drawing in our ideas. So holding the Command key gets our pencil. We can then click to create a green loop, which will then appear just here. So where I clicked was in what's called the first bar, which is this first little space just next to our instrument we've created. Now, if I double click on it, at the bottom, I then get a space to draw some notes in, and you can see a piano keyboard down the left-hand side. Now, on the piano keyboard, when you click on each of the notes, you'll hear a different drum sound. There you go, loads of stuff here. And the one we're looking for, you can see there's a C number, C4, C3. If we scroll all the way down using the scroll bar on the right hand side, you can see C1. That's the one we're looking for because that's where the kick drum is, and the kick drum is that nice heavy drum sound. So kick drum, if you click, you'll hear it. I now want to put that into my song. So I'm going to use that Command key again, that CMD key, and draw it on the first beat. There we go, that's coming quite long, so I'm going to resize it so it's just 1 square long. Now, along the top, you can see it says 1, 1.3, and 2. These are the beats of the bar, and I'm just going to zoom in. Over here on the right-hand side is a little zoom control. If I click and drag and do it enough, 1.2 and 1.4 will appear as well. So these are the beats in the bar, which means when you're counting music, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the main beats in the bar. And so for a kind of classic dancey drum beat, we're going to kick drum on 1. We're also going to put 1 on 2, and on 3, and on 4. So I've done that using my Command key to get the pencil tool, and then I've put in my kick drum on beats 1, 2, 3, and 4. The next sound I'm going to use is the snare drum, which is the drum just above the kick drum, just here. There you go, it's got a kind of a snapping crack sort of a sound. You can click on it to hear it, and then I'm going to draw it in, and I'm going to draw it on beat 2 and on beat 4, just like that. So now I've got that on number 2 and on number 4. Let's have a little listen to it. There we go, so we're starting to get quite a dancey sort of sound. The final drum part I want to look for is this one here, the hi-hat, which sounds like this. It's a little closed cymbal, short cymbal sound. And you find it by, if you look at the group of 2 black notes just above C1, and then find the next one, the group of 3, the first of the group of 3. It's the note F sharp, but you'll know it's the right one because when you click on it, it'll have a short hi-hat sound. So I'm going to put one of those on beat 1, but I'm also going to put it on beat 2, and 3, and 4, so it's lining up with those ones below it. And then I'm going to put it on the squares in between as well. So I'm going to put it just here, just here, just here, and just here. So I've kind of evenly spaced them so that they're effectively happening every 2 squares. Let's have a listen to that now. There we go. I'm going to now loop it by going to the top right hand corner of my loop, and I'll see this little repeating pattern sign here. Click and drag, and then I've got a repeating drum loop. And that's kind of like a standard sort of housey dance music beat. So you can use that as a starting point. When I'm making a drum beat, I often start with something quite simple like that, but then I customize it. So to customize it, I'm going to try putting some other stuff in, maybe some extra hi-hats. I'll try dotting in, maybe even an extra kick drum. I'm not going to go too crazy with adding a few more things on here, but I've added a couple of bits there. I am going to then see what other sounds I like. There's all these kind of things up here. There we go. A bit small, but there we go. So I've just added a few things at random there. I haven't really thought about it too much, but because I started with the basics, hopefully my random ideas are going to fit in as well. Let's have a listen and see. we go. That's working quite nicely. And it sounds that my random stuff works because I didn't go too crazy. I didn't put in too much, just a few little ideas on top of the basic drums I had. And there we go. That's how to make your drum beat. As an extension, you might try making another drum beat to be happen later in the song. Like, for example, if that's the verse, maybe the next one could be the chorus beat. Now, next up, I'm going to put in a bass line. So to put in a bass line, I'm going to make a new track. The add track button is just here. That'll let you to make a new track. And you see where it says software instrument. That's what I'm creating. So I'm going to double click and now I've got a new software instrument. It's an electric piano at the moment. I'm going to choose a bass, but I'm not going to click on bass up here because that's kind of bass guitars, like real bass guitars used in pop and rock. We want something really dancey. So I'm going to look in the synthesizer menu. Here's my synthesizer menu. And there's a good section called EDM bass. EDM means electronic dance music. So that's always good, or just the bass section is good as well. So there's a load of stuff in here. And again, it's always nice to start with one with an exciting sounding name. I'm going to go with this one, Breathless Pumping. And then you should have a computer keyboard plugged into a piano keyboard plugged into your computer. If you don't, you can in the GarageBand menu, press show musical typing and you can play it on your computer keyboard. But if you do have a piano keyboard attached, if you now press a key on the piano keyboard, you will hear some exciting bass sounds. And have a look through these, click on each one and see what they sound like until you've got one that you like the sound of. Remember, this is the bass, so we're playing low on the keys. We're not going to be playing up the high end, we're playing down the very left-hand side, the lowest keys. Now, I'm going to make up a bass line using this pattern. So using my piano keyboard or my musical typing, if you haven't got a piano keyboard, I'm going to try and compose a bass line. Now, making up a bass line, making up a tune on the keyboard is really as simple as coming up with a short repeating pattern. And it's best to stick with all white notes. If you want it to sound quite bright and upbeat, starting on C makes it what's called major, which sounds quite upbeat. Or if you want it to sound a bit darker, starting on the note A can make it sound a bit more dark and minor. I'm going to start on A. Let's hear that A note. And then I'm going to come up with a short pattern. Maybe mine's going to go A, and then maybe I'm going to jump up to the D note, and then maybe back down to C. So I've just chosen a couple of notes. Let's see what that would sound like. Yeah, I think that could work quite nicely. So that's a really simple little tune. I just used 3 notes there. Coming up with something really simple is a good idea. Now let's press play and see if it sounds good with my drums. Here we go. Could be good. So now I'm going to record it in. I'm going to press this little red record button here and I'm going to try playing in my short simple loop, and I actually only need to play it once because I'm then going to repeat it. So let's press record. It'll give me a little count in and then I'm going to play my little idea once. And there we go, I pressed stop and there it was. What you can see, what's going to make it work, this one, is that it's quite short. Okay, it finishes right here on number 3. Having a short loop is going to work really, really well. If you double click on it, you can see the notes and you can see how they work there. Now, I played mine a tiny bit late there, didn't I? Look, it was just before, or a tiny bit early, sorry, just before the grid lines, and the grid lines are really important. The grid lines make sure that everything happens really nicely in time, and when we're playing the keyboard, of course, we're never going to be like robotically perfect. But the great thing about computers is you can make it perfect. So I'm going to select all my notes. You can either do that by dragging a box around them like this, or you can press the Command A for all, and it'll select everything. So I'm going to drag a box. There we go. And then I'm going to press this little Q button here. That is called quantize. And what it does, you'll have just seen it did it there, it snaps them all so they start right on the grid lines, making the timing now 100% perfect, which is really good for this type of music. So I'll show you that one more time. You select the box with dragging like that. Press the little Q on the left and then it'll snap them all exactly on time. I'm now ready to loop my bass. I just got to make sure that it's in the right place. If when I stopped it, it was like this and it finished after the bar line, after the number, then it's not going to loop properly. It's not going to sound very good. So I need to make sure that all the parts I create always start and end on these grid lines going down the page, which start on the numbers. So I've just made it smaller there. You can make it bigger and smaller by dragging from the bottom right hand corner instead of the top, which is for looping. So there we go. I'm making it so it finishes exactly on 3. That'll be nice and in time now. If I go to my looping command on the top right hand corner, click and drag, and now I've got a repeating bass line. Let's hear it. There we go. Because I made sure my loop was correct and everything was in time, that sounds like it's working with my drum beat. So there's how to make a bass line. If you have finished that for a bit of an extension, you might try composing a new bass line to happen later in the song. Now the next part I'm going to show you is adding some chords. So I'm going to add a new track. There we go, software instrument again. And on the left hand side where I choose my sounds, I'm going to go back into the synthesizer menu because synthesizers are good for this style of music. And I'm going to add some chords in now. Chords are notes that are held together. Now there is a section called EDM chord, but they're not quite so good. They sort of automatically play chords for you and they can be a bit complicated to use. I'm going to find this pad menu, okay? The pads are really good for kind of washy, spacey sort of sounds, which can be great for the breakdown section of the song. So I've gone synthesizer, I'm going to choose pad. Again, there'll be lots of different options, so I'm going to choose one, and then I'm just going to try holding a key on the keyboard. There we go. And you'll see they sound like quite spacey sounds. Let's try another. Now, when you find one you like, you're going to try, instead of just holding one key on the keyboard, you're going to try holding a chord, and chords are multiple notes at the same time. I started my bass line on the note A because I wanted it to sound dark. So I might try an A chord. So to play the A chord, I'd play A, C, and E. Your teacher will show you how to find keys on the keyboard if you need to. The A chord sounds like this now. If I play all 3 keys together, there we go. I think that could be quite a nice little sound to add to what I've got. I might also choose another chord to go with it. So maybe I'm going to choose the F chord. There we go. So I've chosen 2 chords, and I'm just going to record in a little pattern where I'm playing one chord and then I'm playing the next chord. But I'm going to really listen to the beat to make sure I'm playing it in time so I get it in the right place. Let's give it a try. I'm going to press record and then record my new pattern. Here we go. There we go, and you can see as it was drawing in there in red that I was playing 3 notes at a time. If I double click on it, I can see them. There they are, and those are my 2 chords that I've recorded. Just like last time, we can quantize it to make sure they're exactly in time by selecting, dragging a box around the notes, or using Command A for all, to select everything. There we go, I've just done that. Then press the Q button, and then it will make sure everything starts right on the grid line, so everything's really nicely in time. I also want to make sure that my loop finishes on the grid lines in this window up here. So does it finish exactly on the number 5? Yes, it does. If it was here, that's not going to loop properly. So I'm going to drag the bottom right hand corner so it's exactly on the grid lines. That'll now be in time if I click and drag my loop menu, top right hand corner of the green loop, and now I've got a repeating pattern. Let's hear these things together to see what they sound like. There we go. So that's coming together with my 3rd part, which is the chords, and if you finish that, you might come up with another chord sequence to go later in the song. All right, the next part I'm going to add is a riff using a synthesizer lead pattern. So just like before, I'm going to add a new track. Top left-hand corner, the little plus button here to add a new track. Always going to choose software instrument, so I'll just press create, and now I've got my new track. Again, it comes in as an electric piano, but I'm going to go into the synthesizer menu on the left. And I'm going to make a riff. A riff is a short repeating melody, which is like the catchy little tune that makes your song memorable. So once I've pressed the synthesizer, something that works really well for the riff is the lead synthesizers. So if I press on lead, there's a whole load of different sounds here, which can be quite nice for making little melodies. So let's choose one and then press some keys on my piano keyboard, or again, if you want to go to the musical typing window and use that, you can. Let's press some keys, see what it sounds like. Yeah, that sounds okay. Let's hear a few more. It's a bit more exciting sounding. I might go with that one, but you can choose any one you like. Have a little look, play the keys on the piano until you've got right. That's a good sound. Now, just like the bass line and the chords, the key to making a good riff is simple. We don't want it to be a really long pattern of loads and loads of different notes because it won't be catchy. We're going to choose just a short, small amount of notes and try and make a short repeating pattern. So I'm going to start, I think maybe with the note C. There we go. And I'm going to try and make a little pattern that fits with everything else I've got. So I'm going to play my track. And on my piano keyboard, I'm going to try improvising, which means using just the white notes. I'm going to see if I can come up with a short pattern of maybe like 3 or 4 different notes that fit with what I've got. Here we go. Let's give it a try. I was messing around there and trying a few different things on my keyboard, but I think part of that, maybe that last bit, I thought might be quite a nice little repeating pattern. I'm just going to turn it up a bit so you can hear it clearly. I think also it was maybe a little bit low, so I'm going to play it higher up on my keyboard. There you go. I think that might cut through a little bit. So I'm going to try recording it now. I'm going to press my record button and then see if I can play that riff. And remember, I only need to play it once because then I can loop it. Here we go. I added an extra little bit on the end there because I thought it might be quite nice having it a little bit of space in my loop, but it could have just been the first section. Right, just as before, I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to have a look at my notes I've played. There they are. I'm going to select them all by dragging a box or by using Command A to select everything. I'm going to press the Q to make sure they're exactly in time, and if anything was a bit wrong, I'd drag it into the right place. And I'm also going to check that my loop finishes exactly on a bar line. There we go, it finishes on number 3, that should be perfect. So if I now click and drag from the top right hand corner, hopefully I've got now a repeating pattern. Let's see. So those parts are working together pretty well. I'm just turning the volumes up and down here to try and make sure that everything fits quite nicely. I could try adding in another lead synthesizer on top of there if I want to, playing another melody pattern. But at this point, I've kind of built up quite a lot of different parts in my track. So the last step is going to be arranging them. That means thinking about the structure of how it's going to start, what's going to come in next, etc. So in this part of the tutorial, I'll show you how to build up the structure of your track. Now, usually the bass is going to be the kind of more exciting bit that comes in later, that big low sound. So I'm going to click and drag this one to a bit later. I'm just going to pop it over here for a minute. And then I'm going to have these parts build in one at a time. You could start however you like. I quite like starting with the drums, but you could start however you'd like to. I'm going to start with the drums, have the drums going a couple of times. Then I'm going to have my chords coming in next. Now, when I'm dragging my chords, I'm not going to put them here. The reason is it's not on the grid lines. It's not lining up with number 3 or number 4, so it's not going to be properly in time. So when I have it come in, I'm going to make sure it's on that grid line, starting right on number 3, right there. That means I've heard 2 times around the drums, and then the chords come in. I'm going to let the chords go for a whole session. There we go, a whole section of just the chords. Then I'm going to bring in my lead synth. My lead synth there starting at bar 7. So it's sort of just coming in exactly on the bar lines. I'm going to have that happen a few times, and then I'm going to have my drums stop. Okay, now this bit's called the breakdown, when everything stops, when the drums stop for a moment and we hear just some of those other sections of the song. Everything gets a bit calm before then the bass drops. Let's have a listen to my song so far. So it starts with the drums. Then in come the chords. Now comes the lead synthesizer. And then here's the breakdown. This is the breakdown section. Everything's quite calm. And then at this point, we want the bass to drop. So to get the bass to drop, firstly, I'm going to bring my drums back in. That means I need to make a copy of my drum beat. I'm not just going to drag it over because then it'll disappear from the start. So to make a copy, click and drag your drums and then hold down the Alt key on your keyboard. That's the letters ALT. It's just next to the Command key. And can you see on my screen it makes this little green bubble appear next to my mouse pointer? That means that when I let go of my mouse, I'm ready to create a copy. There we go. Copy's just appeared. So now my bass is going to come in here. Which is all well and good, but it's going to be more exciting. One of the things that we do in a drop section in a piece of dance music is have a bit of a build-up, and that build-up is often a drum part going dum 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 dum, and then everything happens. The bass comes in. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to make a new loop to be my my drop section. So holding the Command key again to get my pencil tool up, I'm going to click in this sort of empty space, just 2 sort of bars or 2 sections before the big drop. I'm going to resize it, so I'm going to make it so it's a full 2 bars long by clicking on the bottom right hand corner there and clicking and dragging. So now I've got this empty box that goes exactly 2 bars there before everything drops. If I double click on it now, I should get at the bottom here the space where I can draw my notes. Now I'm going to go back down to C1. C1 was my bass drum, and then the one just above it is the snare. There we go. I'm going to draw a snare on the first beat right here. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a snare on every beat. There we go. So I've got 13, and then on the next one is 13.2. So on every one of the numbered beats, once I've zoomed in enough that I can see them. Remember at the start I was a bit zoomed out, so I've zoomed in there so I can see the different numbers along the top. I've done that 4 times. Now for the next set, I'm going to make them doubly as close together. So instead of these ones are kind of every 4 squares, so there's 3 squares in between, and then the next one I'm making them every 2 squares, so with just 1 gap in between. And then on the final set, this set here, I'm going to make them every square, so that each time they repeat, they're getting closer and closer together. That means the sound will get quicker. Let's have a little listen to this drop section now. Here we go. And there we go. So I've now started to build up my track. What I might happen next after the drop is maybe some of these things come back in again. Maybe my chords come back in. And again, I can make a copy by clicking and dragging my loop there and holding the Alt key to create a copy. And that is building up your dance music composition. Let's just have a little listen to the whole of my demo composition so far, and then you can decide what you want to do with it after that. So it starts with an intro. Now the chords. Here's the breakdown section. Go. There's a little tutorial on how to make your own piece of dance music. Just before I finish the tutorial, I'm just going to really quickly talk about some genre things, because it might be that there's a particular style of music you'd like to create, and a lot of that's going to be about the tempo and the drums. So if I go back to the start and go back to my drum beat here, my tempo here, the speed is 120. House music can sometimes be a bit faster than that, so if I made it say 135, it would sound just as good, but just have even more energy. If I wanted to make something like, for example, a drum and bass beat, drum and bass beats are going to be faster than this. So on my tempo control here, I'm going to make my speed about 175, 180, something like that. So I've chosen 175 there, and I'm going to make a drum and bass beat. Here's how to do it. I'm going to click in my first spare to get a new drum beat. And then my pattern is going to be kind of similar to before. I'm going to have a kick drum on beat 1, but I'm going to have a snare drum on beat 2. I'm then going to have a snare drum again on beat 4, just there. And then I'm going to have a kick drum in in between beats 3 and 4. So in this little gap halfway exactly between beats 3 and 4. The hi-hat then, which was the one we looked at here on the F sharp note, I'm going to put on every single beat. So I'm filling the whole thing in just like that. And let's just have a quick listen to what that would sound like. This is a kind of basic drum and bass beat, and the key ingredients are a lot faster, 175, all the hi-hats, and a slightly different pattern of kick and snare. Let's hear it. Now, it sounds okay on that sound, but if you want to change your drum sounds, you can click on here and find something that sounds even better. So I might choose, let's try Beat Machine, see what that sounds like. And you're going to have different ones depending on where you click, things that are going to sound, you know, more appropriate to the genre or not. Oh, that one doesn't sound too exciting. There we go. So that's how to make a kind of drum and bass style beat, which is something you might want to do. All right, good luck with your composing.